So having a look at our final product, we've got our middle circles that spin around. We also have our sort of name targeting plate here. So let's create this part next. Jump back into After Effects and let's create some new text with a couple of different letters. In our example is VAT. Drag it down here and let's create two duplicates. So Control D, Control D. And if we hit enter to rename here, let's call this one speed value, and this one can be called speed text. You'll see why in a minute. So if we scroll down and unlock our track data and drag it to the top, this will be useful in a second. If we hit P to reveal the position and click on speed value, hit P for position there. If we alt click on the stopwatch for position and use the pick whip to drag up to track data's position, now this text layer will pretty much be the same as our null object's position. So you can see they're moving around exactly the same. So if we turn that off again and go back to the start, now we want to toggle this up and toggle it back down. Go into text and alt click on source text and let's start typing in a new expression. So posterize time with a capital T, open bracket, say 3, close bracket, colon, enter, S equals, so we're setting another variable, this layer, which is referencing our speed value, dot transform, whoops, it's very important that the spelling's correct, dot position dot speed, enter math with a capital M, dot round, bracket S times 10,000, close bracket, divided by 10,000. Okay, so that's working. You can see what's happening now. We've got some numbers kind of flying around here, but let's explain what this expression's doing. So if we ignore the first line for a second, now we're saying here that the capital S is this layer, like I said before, the speed value text layer, dot transform dot position, which is referencing the position. So if we hit P for this, hitting U to bring that back up again, dot speed, which is a sort of global variable that's calculating the speed the layer is traveling, which we set to be the same as the track data by this expression here, linking the position of this layer to the position of our track data. And then once again our little hack here to get just 4 decimal places. But we've got a problem. It's flying around and we don't really want that, but that's an easy fix. So if we toggle down our speed text, let's just change that, and we can go down to the text, alt click our source text here, and just pick whip our source text for our speed value. Okay, now we can turn the visibility of our speed value off, and we can reposition our speed text down here somewhere, and you can see what it's doing. Okay, this posterized time thing here is really just saying to update it every so often rather than every frame. So each value will do something a little bit different. So the higher the value, the quicker it's going to update, as you can see. So let's set it back down to 3. Toggle that back up and that back up, and let's get on with creating the rest of the elements. So if we get our text tool, click here and we'll type in another couple of letters, just mash the keys. It's always a good way to get some random letters. Scale this one down a little bit, reposition it where you would like it. Let's duplicate this one, drag it across a bit, go down to our source text like we have previously, and alt click on the stopwatch again. Now we'll just really put a random, which will give a random value. We don't really need the math around because we want this one to be pretty long. And we got some more random motion. Now, like the example here, you can see we've got some really faint boxes around here just to sort of give it an outline, a little bit of a unique look. So let's create that. If we make a new solid, layer new solid, make it whatever color you like again, let's turn the visibility off and zoom in so you can see what we're doing. First of all, we'll click on our rectangle tool, draw a rectangle around our VAT, and another one around here. Okay, now if we get the pen tool, click here, let's make another one here, and another one here. Click on our arrow tool, and if we hold down shift and just press the left arrow key, same here, except right arrow key, same here. Let's do that a couple more times, and we've got some triangle looking things. I'm just going to move these back across a little bit. You want to play around with the positioning, just holding down shift to select different points. That's probably a little bit too much. And also we need to move this one up so it's more in the center. There's lots of playing around involved here, just really to get it the way you want to look. Let's tighten that up a bit. Okay, now let's add our stroke back on here, which should be at the top here, but if you've lost it, we can go down to generate stroke once more. So first of all, we need to click all masks, set this to a medium red, or we can just use our color picker and choose the red from before. We want our stroke to be maybe 1.2 and on transparent. And let's turn our visibility on and our masks off. So that's looking pretty cool. As you can see, it's not really lining up, so we'll want to go in and tweak that a little bit more. Let's move this mask up a little bit and get our VAT back into the center. Okay, like we did before, we need to create a new null object to sort of link this section to. So if we go layer, new null object, we're going to name this one speed text underscore position. We need to rename this one outlines, and just toggle all these up. Now if we select all of these, first of all we'll give this a new color, say blue, and we'll link these up. We also need to link these to our center UI. Well, we want to drag them below and give them a yellow color. Okay, let's lock these ones. I'm going to reposition these elements up here a little bit, and let's get on to our tracking. Okay, so jumping back into After Effects, let's create yet another text layout, and we'll just type tracking ... So what we want to do with this one is get these dots to sort of appear at a set interval, just like we did with this one. So if we toggle down tracking, let's add a opacity animator. Let's set our opacity down to 0, but in this range selector, let's scroll this value forward. Now we don't want to see any of the dots appearing, so value of 73 seems to work. Now let's go to the first frame. We want to set a keyframe for the start, go forward about 6 frames, set it forward just there, so this one's fully visible and the second one isn't. Go forward another 6 frames, do the same thing for the next dot, and go forward another 6 frames and put it on 100. And now let's just click on the first keyframe, Control C to copy, go forward another 6 frames, and Control V to paste. Now highlight all our keyframes, right click, toggle hold keyframe, which will make them snap rather than fade. And if we alt click on the stopwatch for the start parameter to bring up our expression window here, and loop out capital O, remember, open bracket, quotation mark, cycle, quotation mark, close bracket, and there we go. That should loop itself nicely. Nice. So let's toggle this back down. Let's create yet another new text layer. Put a couple of letters in here, duplicate it, and drag that one down a bit. So let's rename this one Y value. Let's rename this one X value. You'll see why in a minute. And let's just position these accordingly. Okay, so what we're going to get these to do is display the X and the Y values of where our track data is going. So again, if we unlock the track data and drag it to the top for ease, hit P here and toggle down to the source text and alt click here. Now let's set a variable, so we can go X equals, now we want to use the pick whip to grab the X value of our track data. Now if we go down, and once again we can do math.round, open bracket, X times 100, close bracket, divided by 100. You should be getting used to that one by now. Now let's copy this one, close down our X value, and do the same for our Y value. Except here we want to set the 0 to 1. So that's getting the Y value. So what's different here? Basically we're setting a variable called X, and we're telling X to be, in this case, our Y position. And we can tell that because our numbers have a value of 0 for X, 1 for Y, and if we have a Z position, so if we're in 3D space, that would be 2. So for the X value, we're telling X to be this comp layer track data, which is referencing here, transform position, which is this, 0, which is this X value. And it's exactly the same as the next one, except we're referencing the Y value instead of the X value. And you should be getting used to the math round hack to only have 2 decimal places at the end here. But now we're displaying both our X and Y positions of our track data. So that's moving around nicely. So let's do a little bit of repositioning. You can get our X value, our Y value, toggle them down, and our tracking. Let's move that down here. You can move this one over a bit, this one over a little bit more. So before we do anything, we need to create one more null object for this layer, new null object. Let's call this one tracking position. Drag it below there. Give all these their own color. Let's say fuchsia. And we want to get these 3 and link them to this tracking position. And like we've been doing beforehand, let's lock all of them so you can't touch them, and we'll move on. So first of all, like we see here, we need to create these lines. So if we go layer, new, solid, doesn't matter what color, let's turn the visibility off, click our pen tool, click anywhere and hold shift and click here. So that's created a straight line. Now if we select our arrow tool, click on our black solid layer, should rename this one lines, press M to bring up the masks, click on this one and Control D for duplicate. Now if we hold down shift and press right once, that gives us a nice even gap in between there. We click off and click on the top one and just move this one down a little bit, just using the up and down arrow keys to position this one. Now we want to duplicate this, Control D, Move it across a little bit, same spacing, Control D, Control D, and now we've got 5 lines. So this one's pretty much going to be displayed every 5 lines. So if we select all of these, Control D, holding down Shift and using our right arrow again, just duplicating them along. We can also select them now and do 3 at a time, 3 at a time, but basically we want to get it quite long so we have some breathing space. So once more we can select all of them by clicking the first one, holding Shift, clicking the last one, Control D, holding Shift, so that'll go across, and that should do us. Now once more we can go Effect, Generate, Stroke, make it the same red color, OK, make these 1.2 and turn the visibility on. And we also need to check all masks and paint style on transparent. Check that out, we got some nice lines going here. So if we position this in the center, around here, we want to move our anchor point, so if we choose the pan behind tool, just drag it to around the middle. Now let's duplicate this layer. Press M to reveal all our masks, click the first one, go to the bottom, there's quite a lot, isn't there? Hold down Shift, click the last one and delete. So now we want to make a new mask. Like before, we can click and drag the box here. Let's get the pen tool, try and click somewhere in the middle, click the arrow tool, and let's bump that up. If you'd like, you can get the pen tool once more, 2 new points, click the selection tool, and sort of get these lined up again. Now that's looking a little bit too tall, bring it down, okay. So really you just want to refine it until you like the look of things. Looking back at our original example, we've got some numbers along here as well. So let's create them. Get the text tool and we'll move over here. So let's type 0. Now I want this to be in the middle. This will be important later. So if we zoom in, let's position this right underneath that line. Control D to duplicate, move it along. Let's make this one 5, duplicate it again, move it along, make this one 10, duplicate this one, move it along, make this one 15. I'm sure you can get the gist of what I'm doing, so I'll pause the recording and come back when that's done. Okay, here we are. We got all our numbers from 0 to 85. And you can see this box we made earlier is a little bit too big, so we need to go back and tweak that. So if we zoom right in, get a whole box, just holding down Shift and clicking the lines. Let's move that up a little bit. So our arrow's in the middle here. Let's move this up a little bit, this across a little bit. Let's move this in, let's move this in, and let's move this down. You just want to get everything even. Okay, that's looking much better. Now, as you can probably see, there are a ton of different elements, and all these layers will start clogging up our timeline way too much. So if we go right to the top, select our last layer, which should be a number, go right down to the bottom, hold Shift and click on lines, except we want to deselect this one, which is our little arrow slider thingy. Now go Layer, Pre-Compose, and let's name this one Lines, and OK. Now we want to rename this one to say Line Pointer, and just drag that one over the top. So we don't really want to see all these lines at once, so we need some way to get rid of this side and this side. So if we go Layer, New, Solid, and make it any color, Let's drag it below the line pointer and just above the lines. Turn the visibility off. Select our rectangle mask tool and let's make it the same sort of width as this circle here. Just like that. And on our track mat, again, if you can't see that, you can hit F4 or the toggle switches and modes here and set the track mat here to alpha mat. So that's gotten rid of it, but we want to soften it out a little bit. So if we click on here, which is our matte layer, probably should rename that to lines underscore matte, and hit F to bring up our mask feather properties and just feather it out a bunch. Say maybe 105. Now if you haven't made your rectangle mask as tall as this, you might be getting some feathering on your y-axis. So to fix this, we can unlink our x and y axis on the feather and just set the y to 0. So now we only have the blur on the x-axis, which is left and right, and absolutely none on the y-axis, which is up and down. Cool. So let's toggle that back up, turn the visibility for the pointer thingy on, and let's start giving this a bit of motion. So if we click the lines layer, effect, expression controls, slider control. Now let's rename this one X slide value. If we go down here, I'll click on the stopwatch next to position and type the following: X equals, and pick whip our slider value here, colon, Y equals, and pick whip our Y value here, colon, enter, and square bracket X comma Y, close square bracket. So what this expression is doing is it's taking the value here and setting that as X and using our original Y value as Y. So as we increase this, you can see our sliders starting to come along. So 85 is the end, so we want to try to get that in the middle, maybe around there. And let's animate this. So Alt click on the stopwatch for the slider, just wiggle, open bracket, 1.2, comma, 100, close bracket. So that's going to wiggle itself around a lot. So as a whole, we've pretty much got our UI here. So let's animate these new elements to come on. If we hit T for opacity, click the stopwatch, set this value to 0, go to about 8 and set it to 100. Shift F9, should be getting the hang of this one by now. Unlock our tracking values, T, set the keyframe, go here, set them to 0, highlight these ones, Shift F9, and let's offset these to come on like so. And last of all, we need to do it for these values up here too. So if we relock these, unlock these, select them all, T, opacity, set to 0, and Shift F9. Drag this up just to make a little bit more space. And now we want to offset a couple of these. So drag these up here, this one here, let's say this one here. Should probably keep that the same, because that's where the value is coming from. And okay, they all animate on. Now for our last thing, our little pointer. We lock them, go right to the top. Let's do something a little bit different with this one. So if we hit T for opacity, we want that to turn on there. Set this to 0. Shift F9, and let's offset this one. Now if we hit P for position and go to where everything starts, so if we hold Shift T, set a position keyframe, click this button to go back to the very first opacity keyframe on this layer, And let's just slide the X value along out here. Now we want to set this one, Shift F9, so that's going to slide in and come on. Pretty cool. So, back here, we can see we've got one more element, which is this. And then our main part of the UI is complete. So this line thing we're creating has to have one end stick to the middle of the crosshair and the other one down here. So if we create a new solid by going Layer, New Solid, doesn't really matter what color it is. Now go Effect, Generate, Beam. If we set the length to 100, the time should stay 50 for the moment. Starting thickness should be 3, ending thickness should be 3, and the softness should be 0. Now if we zoom in a little bit so you can see the red, we should set both our inside color and outside color to that red. And we've got our beam. So just quickly we'll set our ending point to around the middle of the crosshair and our starting point down here. But this will change, you'll see. So if we want the ending point to stick to our track, we need to give it an expression. If we alt click on our ending point and just pick whip down to our position, you'd think all's fine. All is not fine. Look at where this is. Now this is a problem because we don't want our point up here. So there's a little trick we have to do. So if we go Effect, Expression Controls, Slider Control, we'll call this one X Position, or duplicate that and call this Y Position. Now we need to write the little expression. If we go X equals the X position of the slider plus the X position of our track data, and Y equals the Y position plus the Y position of our track data, and we want to put colons at the end here, and square bracket X comma Y close square bracket. Now it's still up here, but we have a bit of control because we can use these sliders to drag our point where we need it to be. Just like this. So ideally, we need to get it in the same position as where our track data is in the corner up here. Although it doesn't look right at the moment, it will be. It'll be in the middle of the crosshair just because we don't have anything else moving at the moment. 5. Okay. So you can see that's sticking there pretty nicely. So let's go down here to where we've put this point. We'll go Layer, New, Solid. We want to get the same red as well. And okay. Let's turn the visibility off for a second. Zoom in. And let's create our rectangle mask here with an ellipse at the end. So if we click here and hold Control Shift Alt and drag out, we get a perfect circle. Might want to nudge that down with the arrow key a little bit and turn that back on. So now that just looks like an extension of this beam, which is pretty cool. And now if we go Layer, New, Solid, make this one black, turn that off, copy mask 2 here and paste it here. Now we want to double click on the corner whilst holding Control and Shift to keep our circle a circle rather than going out like this. And that looks good. Just click off and back on. Go Effect, Generate Stroke, set it to all masks, paint on transparent, set it to red, and we want to try and set it the same sort of width. Might want to turn our layer back on. So 1.5 looks about right. So let's grab the text tool and just type something like tracking and put it in position. Duplicate it, move it down a bit, and Alt click on source text, x equals random open close bracket math dot round. So you should be getting used to this one by now. Just giving us some random numbers. And reposition this one. Put that there. And we'll duplicate this layer. Drag it to the top. M. Delete the mask. Get our rectangle tool and we'll draw a rectangle around here. Maybe make that a little bit bigger. Just like that. Okay. Now we need to animate this to come on. So if we go to the start, select our line. Should probably go through and rename all these. Line horizontal, circle, and random number underscore box. Close these down. Okay, so you need to go back into our beam and making sure we're on the first frame here, we'll put the time of our beam to 100 and set a keyframe, move forward to about 10, set that to 50. So that's drawing itself on. Now we need to make this line continue onto here, which we can do with a simple mask. So if we go to frame 10, get our line horizontal and just draw a big mask over it. Now if we set this to subtract, it'll go on. Now press M, hit mask path, and just take about 4 frames to drag this across. So if we click off, you can see what this looks like. That's pretty cool. Now we want the rest of this to fade on. So if we go into the circle, hit T, set the opacity to 0, set keyframe, go forward about 4 frames, set that to 100, we'll set that animation to smooth. Now we go to our tracking and random number box. Let's do the same thing. Set all of them keyframe, set it to 0, highlight these, and Shift F9. Let's just offset these a little bit. And these should be the same. Okay.